Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? Maybe it was the uniform or the lack of one. In a room full of hardened operators, metals gleaming under fluorescent light, she looked like someone who didn't belong. A gray maintenance uniform, sleeves rolled, quiet hands, eyes down. She said nothing, just listened. The sound of steel and oil and laughter filled the Coronado Armory, the kind of laughter that cuts deeper when it's not meant to hurt, but still does. She kept working, cloth sliding across a Barrett .50 rifle, movement slow, precise. The weapon was twice her size, yet her hands moved like they'd been there before, not learning, remembering. The kind of motion that comes from muscle memory, not manuals. Then the door slammed open, and silence followed like a shadow. Commander Nathan Briggs entered, tall, pressed uniform, authority in every line of his face. His voice carried that particular sharpness men develop after too many years of being obeyed. Who the hell let a maintenance tech touch classified weapons? Laughter rippled again. Some smirked, others pointed. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up, just kept cleaning, calm, steady. The name tag stitched to her chest read, C.L. A. Dawson. Briggs stopped beside her, his shadow swallowing the light on the table. You planning to polish it into a promotion? Her tone didn't match her size. It was quiet, steady, but it cut through the air. Sir, your chamber alignment's off by a millimeter. The laughter stopped. Every head turned. She might as well have pulled a trigger. The silence was louder than any insult. Briggs frowned, leaning over the rifle. Step away from the weapon. She obeyed instantly, setting the cloth down with military precision. Her back straightened, chin level, eyes unblinking. No rebellion, just composure. That bothered him even more. He picked up the Barrett roughly, flipping it over, inspecting like a man trying to prove something. Civilians don't touch classified gear, especially not this. Metal clanked. He forced the bolt back, mishandling the mechanism. See, he said with a grin to his men, you probably already scratched the extractor. Her voice came soft, almost polite. Sir, that's the wrong disassembly order. He froze. The words hit like a slap in a silent room. One of the SEALs, a massive man they called Bear Mal, grinned from the benches. Listen, lady, he rumbled, you clean floors, not firearms. More laughter. Beside him, Chief Warrant Officer Emily Voss folded her arms. Maybe she watched a YouTube video. But not everyone laughed. In the corner, an older man watched her quietly, Master Chief Ray Dox Hanley, 23 years in the Navy, eyes seasoned by every kind of arrogance men carry. He'd seen this before, not the mocking, but the stillness. That calm before a storm that doesn't make sound. Briggs ignored her correction, continuing the teardown. The recoil spring slipped, snapping back and nearly slicing his hand. The room winced. She took one half-step forward, voice steady. If you twist the lower pin before the upper, it won't jam. Briggs looked up sharply. You telling me how to handle the sniper rifle now? Her gaze didn't break. No, sir, just trying to prevent damage. That calm, that quiet certainty unnerved him. He set the rifle down roughly. Fine, if you know so much, let's see it. You want me to fix it, sir? He laughed. Go ahead if you think you can. She stepped closer. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Her fingers danced across the weapon, moving with surgical precision. In less than 30 seconds, the Barrett was stripped, cleaned, reassembled, smooth, perfect. The metallic click of the bolt locking forward echoed through the room like punctuation. No one laughed this time. Hanley leaned forward slightly. Her stance, elbows tight, shoulders squared, wasn't civilian. That was the posture of someone who'd carried rifles longer than they'd carried doubts. Briggs studied her, irritation shifting to curiosity. You served somewhere, didn't you? She paused. For a heartbeat, her eyes flickered, something distant, something broken, gone too long to name. Then she said quietly, once. That single word silenced the entire room. Voss looked away, uneasy. Even Bear shifted on his feet. Something about the way she said it, soft, almost an echo, made them realize this wasn't a woman pretending to know guns. It was a woman pretending not to. Briggs cleared his throat. "All right, Ms. Dawson, you think you're an expert. Let's find out." Hanley muttered, "Commander, maybe we don't need." But Briggs cut him off. "No, we're doing this. If she's as good as she acts, she won't mind a test." She didn't argue. She simply folded her hands behind her back, eyes forward, waiting. That silence made every man in the room uneasy. Briggs gestured toward the long table. "Set up the test. M4, field strip, blindfolded." Bear laughed, relieved. "Now this I gotta see." Voss whispered, "This'll be quick." Hanley said nothing. He watched the way Claire's breathing changed, slower, deeper, deliberate. Not nerves. Control. That same kind of focus he'd seen in Afghanistan, in shooters who could field strip a weapon mid-firefight because the difference between seconds and hesitation was survival. The table was cleared. The room fell quiet. Briggs' voice carried across the steel and oil. "We'll see how much this maintenance tech really knows." Bear placed an M4 on the table, grinning. "Better make sure she knows which end's the barrel." Forced laughter, uneasy. Claire reached into her pocket, pulled out a piece of black cloth, and tied it around her eyes before anyone could speak. Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Oh, so you've done this before?" Her voice barely above a whisper. "Once or twice." "All right then, let's see it. Timer starts now." The stopwatch beeped. Silence followed. Then, click. The sound of a safety disengaged. The faint metallic whisper of a weapon surrendering to her touch. Her hands moved with rhythm, mechanical, practiced. The parts came apart in sequence, perfect order. Bear frowned. "She can't see a thing, how's she even?" "Muscle memory," Hanley muttered. "That's not from reading manuals." 2 minutes passed. She'd already stripped the receiver. Her fingertips brushed across the bolt carrier group, counting coils, feeling alignment. She worked like she was sculpting silence itself. At 3 minutes, she began reassembly. Every motion clean, confident. When the final pin locked into place, the sound rang through the armory like a heartbeat. 4 minutes 32 seconds, done. The timer still ticked in Briggs' hand. He forgot to stop it. When he finally looked down, it read 4:36. No one clapped, no one breathed. He picked up the weapon, inspecting every latch, pin, and spring. Perfect, not a scratch. Bear swallowed, fluke. Her blindfold came off. Calm eyes, no emotion. "Would you like me to do it again, sir?" Briggs didn't answer. Hanley took a slow step forward, eyes narrowing. "That's not luck," he murmured. "That's training you can't fake." Briggs looked at her differently now. The faint scar across her knuckle, the kind left when a rifle bolt slams shut on skin too slow to move. That detail hit him like memory, the small, ugly truths only soldiers carry. He turned away to hide his unease. "Book skills don't make you a shooter," he said sharply. "Let's see if you can hit something." She nodded once. "Yes, sir." Hanley exhaled. "Commander, maybe that's—" But Briggs had already turned toward the range. His pride needed to win something tonight. 5 rounds, 800 meters, any miss, you're done here. Bear chuckled, trying to reclaim confidence. Finally, a show. She moved past them without a word. Each step quiet, measured, controlled. It wasn't confidence. It was absence of fear, the kind that comes after you've lost everything you ever cared about. They followed her out to the range. The late afternoon sun bled gold across the Pacific. Wind swept cold over dunes and gravel. 5 steel plates shimmered faintly 800 meters away, almost invisible in the glare. Briggs crossed his arms. "You miss once, you're finished." "Understood," she said simply. She crouched, adjusting the bipod, movements fluid. Windage, elevation, breathing control. Each correction done with an instinct that made Hanley's stomach twist. This wasn't guessing. This was memory. Bear leaned toward him. She's just winging it. Hanley shook his head. No one wings it like that. Briggs checked his watch, forcing indifference. Whenever you're ready. She exhaled. The kind of exhale that releases more than air, the weight of something she's carried too long. The wind cut across the range, carrying salt and silence. She lay prone, body aligned perfectly behind the Barrett. The rifle looked massive in her arms, yet somehow smaller than her control over it. Her hand slid the bolt forward, click. That sound again, metallic heartbeat. "Ready when you are," Briggs said, trying to sound bored. She didn't respond, just waited. The world seemed to hold still with her. Then boom! The first shot cracked through the air, the recoil absorbed like breath. Half a second later, a distant ring, perfect hit. A murmur rippled through the line. Boom, second shot, another ring, dead center. Bear's smirk faltered, Voss blinked. Boom, third shot, no adjustment, no hesitation. Hanley muttered under his breath, "That's not SEAL precision, that's agency discipline." Briggs swallowed hard, pride fading into awe. Boom, fourth shot, another perfect echo. The laughter was gone, only the wind remained. She loaded the fifth round, then paused, reached forward and removed the scope. "What the hell is she doing?" Voss whispered. "No scope, iron sights only." Hanley's eyes widened. "She can't." Boom! The silence after the shot stretched long enough to feel eternal. Then, from across the dunes, clang. Bullseye. No one spoke, not one word. Claire rose slowly, calm, composed. She set the rifle down gently, removed her ear protection and looked at them not with pride, just quiet completion. Briggs' jaw clenched. The same woman he mocked had just rewritten what he thought possible. Voss whispered, "Who is she?" Claire's lips barely moved. "Just maintenance, ma'am." And she walked away, boots crunching softly on the gravel, leaving behind the silence she'd earned. Hanley watched her disappear into the armory's shadow, whispering under his breath, "Ghosts don't stay buried." The sun dipped lower. The air cooled. And for the first time in a long time, every man in that unit understood something he couldn't name, that some legends don't need ranks or recognition. They just need silence to remind the world they were real. What do you do when silence starts asking questions? For Master Chief Ray Hanley, that question had been echoing since the gunfire stopped. The echo of those 5 perfect shots still rang in his ears long after the range went quiet. He'd seen shooters, good ones, even great ones, but never that calm. Never that kind of stillness. Inside the armory, the air smelled of oil and carbon. Most of the team had drifted out, their laughter replaced by something they didn't want to name. Briggs was packing, the kind of packing men did when pride met confusion. Bear sat on a bench, elbows on knees, staring at the rifle as if it had betrayed him. Voss had gone silent too, eyes lost somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. Hanley stood apart, hands behind his back, gaze fixed on the maintenance tech who wasn't a tech at all. Claire Dawson was wiping down the Barrett again, same calm rhythm, same deliberate breathing. No triumph, no trace of satisfaction, just quiet completion. Briggs finally broke. "Book skills don't make you a shooter," he snapped, as if saying it could rewind the afternoon. "Anyone can get lucky." Hanley didn't answer. He knew luck when he saw it. This wasn't that. Claire placed the rifle back in its case, latched it gently, then turned to leave. Briggs tried to speak again, some half-formed order, but the words never made it past guilt. She walked past him without a word. When the door closed behind her, the commander exhaled for the first time in minutes. The sound came out shaky. Voss finally asked the question sitting in everyone's throat. "Who is she?" No one answered. Because no one knew. Hanley waited until the room cleared, then made his way to the control booth adjoining the armory. The glow of computer monitors painted his face blue. He typed her name into the contractor registry. Claire A. Dawson, Civilian Maintenance Technician, Level 2 clearance. No previous postings. No references. No emergency contacts. No listed education. Too clean. Way too clean. He'd been in the Navy long enough to recognize when a record had been scrubbed. There were holes where history should have been. Someone had erased her like you erase a classified mistake. Hanley leaned closer to the screen. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Outside, the sound of the Pacific rolled through the open window, steady, unbroken. Back in the hallway, Commander Briggs stopped halfway to his office. The range replayed in his mind again and again. The recoil, the ring, the stillness of her eyes. Every frame stung like truth he didn't want to see. He told himself it was pride that made him dig further, but it wasn't pride, it was guilt. By nightfall, he was in his office, staring at her file himself. The same blank spaces stared back. He scrolled, searching for something, anything beyond maintenance technician. Nothing. Maintenance techs don't outshoot SEALs, he muttered. He tapped a key he wasn't supposed to tap, accessed a channel he wasn't authorized to open. Curiosity had already turned into obsession. He typed her name again. Claire Dawson, clearance restricted. A red warning banner flashed. Authorized personnel only. Level Alpha access required. Briggs hesitated. Then, against every regulation, he entered his command override. The screen blinked, stalled, then loaded. Name: Claire A. Dawson. Status: KIA Afghanistan, October 2020. Affiliation: Joint Task Force Ghostlight, CIA/JSOC Liaison. Call sign: Angel of Silence. Confirmed kills: 49. Longest recorded kill: 3,347 meters. He stared at the numbers, throat dry. KIA. But she was standing in his armory. He scrolled further. Photographs appeared, grainy surveillance stills from the desert. A team in sand-stained fatigues, faces blurred except one. Sorry. Younger, leaner, eyes just as calm, barrett slung across her back. Below the photo, survivor extracted status changed to deceased per agency directive. Cover identity issued. Civilian contractor, Naval Armory. Briggs leaned back in his chair. His breath came shallow. Angel of Silence, he whispered. He'd heard the name before, whispers in forward bases, stories traded between snipers who didn't believe in ghosts but believed in her. A woman who made impossible shots and vanished into dust, a myth born of bullet wind. And she'd been standing in his armory. He rubbed his hands over his face, shame pressing into his chest. He'd mocked her, tested her, turned her skill into spectacle. A knock at the door broke the silence. "Come in." Hanley stepped inside. His expression said he already knew. "You found something." Briggs turned the monitor toward him. Hanley's eyes scanned the page. His voice dropped. "Jesus, Ghostlight, that program was supposed to be black vaulted. She's not supposed to exist." "She's supposed to be dead," Briggs muttered. Hanley nodded slowly. "Guess some ghosts don't stay buried." Briggs slumped forward, elbows on knees. "We humiliated her, Ray, in front of everyone, and she took it, didn't even blink." Hanley's eyes softened. "That's what they do, they carry it, all of it." For a moment, neither man spoke. The hum of the overhead light filled the space like penance. Finally, Briggs whispered. "She had a record-breaking shot. 3,347 meters. That's not training. That's obsession and loss. You don't get that calm unless you've buried your whole team." Hanley said nothing, because he knew Briggs was right. Outside, Coronado slept under the orange wash of streetlights, but neither man moved. Some truths, once uncovered, refused to stay quiet. Hours later, Hanley stepped out into the night air. The ocean wind carried the faint taste of salt and guilt. He looked toward the far end of the base where the lighthouse beam swept slow circles across the water. A figure stood at the rail, still, solitary. Claire. He hesitated, then left her alone. Some ghosts wanted company, others just wanted distance. She sat with her back against the railing, watching the beam slice through fog. No insignia, no medals, just a faded base jacket and silence. Her eyes stayed on the horizon as if waiting for something that would never return. When the crunch of footsteps approached, she didn't turn. "I figured I'd find you here," came Briggs's voice, quieter now, human. "You always send men to clean up ghosts, Commander." He stopped beside her. The beam cut briefly across his face, made him look older. "Why hide here?" he asked finally. "Someone like you could be anywhere, teaching, training, hell, leading your own unit." She smiled faintly without warmth. "Ghosts don't belong in daylight." The wind pressed against their words, cold and sharp. "You read my file," she said, not a question. He nodded once. "I did." "Then you know why I don't wear a uniform anymore." "I know you were betrayed," he said quietly. "Operation Crosswind." She turned just enough for him to see her eyes, calm, distant, unbearably tired. "Betrayed," she repeated softly. "That's one word for it. My team didn't die because of bad intel, Commander. They died because someone in Washington sold our coordinates. 11 good people gone in under 3 minutes. They declared me KIA so no one would look for answers." Briggs looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry." She studied him for a moment. Not anger, not pity, just understanding. "Don't be, you didn't kill them." "I mocked you," he said. "In front of everyone, you didn't deserve that." She stood, jacket flaring in the wind. "Mockery's easy to live with, Commander. Burials aren't." The words landed like stones. Then a sound, the low thrum of rotor blades, distant at first, then rising. Briggs looked up. A black helicopter approached from the mist, lights off, cutting low over the water. It banked toward the lighthouse pad. "They're early," she murmured. "Who?" Briggs asked, though he already feared the answer. The helicopter touched down in a storm of wind and sand. The side door slid open. A man stepped out, black flight jacket, headset pressed to one ear. "Agent Dawson," he called over the roar. "It's time." Briggs blinked. "Agent." The man approached, flashing a badge. "CIA Field Operations, Monroe." Claire gave a single nod. Even ghosts get summoned back. She turned to Briggs. "It's classified from here. You don't want to be part of what comes next." "Wait," he said, stepping forward. "Whatever this is, you don't have to go. You've done enough. They've taken enough." She smiled sadly. "I stopped choosing a long time ago." Monroe's tone cut through the wind. "We appreciate your cooperation, ma'am. Debriefing will be short. Your presence is required in DC." Briggs heard the phrasing and it chilled him. This wasn't a debrief. It was containment. Claire reached into her pocket, pulled out a small sealed envelope, and pressed it into his hand. "Hold on to this," she said. "Don't open it unless you hear I'm gone." He looked down at his name written neatly across the front. "What's inside?" "The truth," she said, "and the proof they buried with my team." "You trust me with this?" "I trust you more than them." She paused, eyes softening for just a heartbeat. "You remind me of someone I lost. Stubborn, loud, thought he knew everything. Died trying to save his men. You'd have liked him." The helicopter's rotors surged. Monroe gestured impatiently. Claire straightened her cap, an old reflex. No rank left, but discipline never dies. She looked at Briggs one last time. "Some people never really die, Commander," she said, voice steady over the storm. "They just change positions." Briggs' spine straightened instinctively. He raised his hand, slow, deliberate, into a salute. For a long second she just looked at him, then returned the salute, crisp and perfect. The wind howled as she turned and walked toward the helicopter, boots crunching. Monroe closed behind. The door slammed. The machine lifted, light cutting across her face one last time before the night swallowed her. Briggs stood alone on the pad, wind clawing at his uniform, envelope clutched tight in his hand. The chopper vanished into fog. No sound, no movement. Only the rhythmic crash of waves below. He looked at the envelope again. Her handwriting was small, precise, a soldier's hand. Some people never really die, they just change positions. And for the first time in years, Commander Nathan Briggs felt the weight of a salute he didn't deserve. How long can silence hold a secret? For 3 weeks, Commander Nathan Briggs found out. Every morning he told himself she'd walk through the armory doors again, that calm face, those quiet eyes. But each day passed, and the space she'd left behind stayed empty. The rifles were polished, the benches spotless, yet something invisible had gone with her, like the air itself had learned respect. The team never spoke her name aloud, but they didn't have to. It lived between their pauses. Hanley noticed the change first. Bear Malley stopped joking. Voss stopped arguing. Even Briggs's voice had softened during briefings, still sharp, but hollow around the edges. And every night, when the base lights dimmed, he'd open the top drawer of his desk and stare at the small, sealed envelope with his name on it. "Don't open it unless you hear I'm gone." He hadn't heard anything. Not yet. Until the message came. The subject line read, "Washington Incident Confidential." A short report from Naval Intel. Routine casualty notice, no commentary. CIA Field Officer Eric Monroe, deceased. Apparent heart attack in a parking structure outside Langley. Briggs felt the bottom of his stomach drop. Men like Monroe didn't die quietly in parking lots. He sat there for a long time, watching the cursor blink on the screen, every pulse of light reminding him of that night on the lighthouse pad, the wind, the helicopter, her voice disappearing into the roar. He opened the drawer. The envelope waited, still sealed, edges worn from the times he'd picked it up and put it back down. His name, written in perfect block letters. Her handwriting was steady, disciplined, like she'd written it on a battlefield. He hesitated, then tore it open. Inside were folded documents, photographs, and one handwritten note. "The truth survives even when its carriers don't. AOS. Angel of Silence." He unfolded the first page. Operation Crosswind. Declassified evidence, unauthorized copy. Lines of text glared back. Encrypted messages between a private defense contractor and 2 senior government officials. Coordinated transfers, coordinates attached. He read faster, then stopped. They had leaked Claire Dawson's team location to a foreign contact, in exchange for funding a weapons deal. 11 operatives traded for profit margins. His hands shook. The next page showed timestamps, signatures, wire transfers, enough to destroy careers, maybe entire agencies. Beneath the paperwork lay a photograph, a younger Claire with her team, dusty fatigues, arms linked, grinning under a torn flag. Her arm was around a tall, bearded man wearing a patch that read Crosswind 1. On the back, in her handwriting, "For the ones who didn't get to walk away." Briggs swallowed hard. The paper trembled between his fingers. He kept reading until the words blurred. Betrayal had a smell. He could taste it in the room, stale coffee, cold guilt. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She trusted him with this, not with vengeance, with truth. And now she was gone. He could have sent the evidence up the chain. He could have called JAG or NCIS or whoever still pretended to hold justice. But deep down he knew what would happen. The file would vanish. The system would eat itself to stay alive. So he locked the envelope inside a steel case and sat there in the dark, listening to the hum of the bass, and to the one question that wouldn't leave him. What happens to the people who carry the truth alone? Days turned into another week. Routine returned, but not really. The men still trained, the sun still rose over the Pacific, but everything felt muted, as if the color had drained from the world. Hanley found him one evening by the range. The commander sat on the bench, elbows on knees, staring down the line of targets glowing white in the setting sun. "You opened it," Hanley said quietly. Briggs didn't look up. "Yeah. And everything we feared, worse." Hanley sighed, sitting beside him. "You going to turn it in?" "I should," Briggs said. "But if I do, it dies in a vault before sunrise." "Then why tell me?" "Because someone should know what we did to her," Briggs said. "How we mocked her, how she stood there and took it, and how she still trusted me with the truth." Hanley rubbed his face, voice low. "You can't carry it forever, Nate. Secrets rot if you keep them locked too long." Briggs nodded slowly. "Maybe, but some truths deserve to breathe only when the world's ready to listen." They sat in silence, the waves beyond the berm whispering like distant gunfire. Finally Hanley spoke. "You know what kills me? She wasn't angry, not once. That calm, it wasn't pride, it was grief dressed in discipline." Briggs looked at him. "You think she's alive?" Hanley shrugged. "Ghosts like her don't vanish easy, but if she's gone, she earned her peace." Briggs didn't answer. He just watched the horizon until the light faded completely. That night the commander couldn't sleep. The envelope's contents haunted him like a pulse under his pillow. He imagined her handwriting again, the neat lines, the quiet resignation between every word. He thought about the last thing she'd said. Some people never really die, they just change positions. Was that what she'd done? Changed positions, moved from the living into the spaces between secrets. The next morning, an internal memo appeared in his inbox. "Unauthorized data breach investigation. Classified files accessed via command override." A chill ran through him. That was his override, someone knew. He deleted the message, logged off, and stared at his reflection in the dark monitor. The man looking back didn't carry arrogance anymore, just the heavy clarity of someone who finally understood what silence costs. He packed a go-bag before dawn, tossed it into the passenger seat of his truck, and drove toward the lighthouse. The beam still swept the coastline, patient, endless, searching. The same place she'd stood, the same wind, the same sound of waves like artillery softened by distance. He walked to the railing, opened the steel case, and pulled out the photograph again. The faces of her team looked impossibly young. One woman had freckles. One man was holding up a peace sign. The bearded soldier, the one with the crosswind one patch, had his arm draped over Claire's shoulder. She wasn't smiling for the camera, she was smiling at them. Briggs set the picture on the rail, weighed it down with a coin from his pocket. His old deployment challenge coin, edges worn smooth. He whispered, "Rest easy, Angel." The wind tugged at the photograph, flipping it once before it settled again. The lighthouse beam passed over, making the coin flash silver for half a second before the night reclaimed it. He stayed until the horizon blurred. Somewhere behind him, footsteps approached. He turned, half expecting Hanley, half expecting no one. Instead, a young intel officer stood there, nervous, clutching a folder. "Sir, message for you, urgent, hand-delivered." Briggs took it. The officer left without waiting. Inside, a single sheet. Subject: Internal Review Operation Crosswind. Unauthorized materials intercepted. Personnel implicated. CMDR Nathan Briggs, Master Chief Ray Hanley, pending inquiry. He read it twice, then tore it in half and let the pieces drift into the sea. He didn't care anymore about rank or career. There are lines a man can't uncross once he's looked truth in the face. As he turned to leave, something flickered in the distance, a light, low over the water. For a heartbeat, it looked like the same black helicopter, gliding silently through fog. Then it was gone. He stood there, the salt air stinging his eyes. Maybe it was memory, Maybe it was. Either way, the ocean didn't answer. Back on base, Hanley waited in the armory, paperwork spread across the table. When Briggs returned, he didn't speak at first. The commander looked older now, shoulders bent under invisible weight. "They're coming after us," Briggs said simply. Hanley nodded. "I figured they won't risk that evidence getting out." What if she knew this would happen? "She did," Hanley said. "That's why she gave it to you." Briggs sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "So what do we do?" Hanley slid a small hard drive across the table. "You're not the only one who makes copies, Commander." Briggs blinked. I made a backup the night you told me. If they bury one, the other survives." Briggs looked at him, half in disbelief, half in gratitude. "Why?" Hanley's eyes met his. "Because I was there when she shot those plates, and because silence deserves witnesses." For a long moment, neither man moved. The hum of the vents filled the armory, steady as breath. Finally Briggs whispered, "Then we protect it, however long it takes." Hanley nodded, agreed. They both knew what that meant: careers over, futures uncertain, but conscience finally clean. Outside, the morning light broke over the Pacific, same as always, indifferent and beautiful. Briggs looked toward it, the envelope still clutched in his hand, and thought about the woman who'd carried an entire story inside her chest and never once asked for sympathy. Heroes don't always need saving. Sometimes they just need to be remembered. The beam of the lighthouse swept one last time across the base, fading into daylight. Somewhere in that glare he imagined her silhouette again, hair pulled back, rifle slung, eyes on the horizon. The angel of silence, still watching, still protecting something bigger than herself. Briggs breathed in the sea air and whispered, almost to the wind, "Wherever you are, mission complete." But the wind didn't answer. It never does. How do you hide the truth when it already has your fingerprints on it? Commander Nathan Briggs learned the answer the hard way. 2 days after the memo arrived, naval security descended on Coronado like a storm, unmarked cars, clipped voices, eyes that never smiled. They called it a routine internal review. Everyone knew it was. By noon, the armory was sealed. Every rifle logged, every terminal imaged. The same benches where laughter once echoed now sat under bright lights and silence. Master Chief Hanley stood beside Briggs as two investigators rifled through his desk drawers. "You think they'll arrest us?" Hanley whispered. Briggs didn't look up. "Not yet. They'll start with questions, then they'll erase the answers." The younger of the investigators paused, holding up the empty steel case that once held Claire Dawson's envelope. "Sir, where's the original document that was stored here?" Briggs's face stayed neutral. "Disposed, unauthorized materials." A lie, clean, simple, the kind men tell when they're already guilty in the eyes of the system. The agent scribbled a note, expression unreadable. When they finally left, Hanley exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "You sure this is worth it?" Briggs's gaze drifted to the window, to the thin line of sea beyond the base fence. "She trusted me with the truth, Ray. That's worth whatever comes next." That night Briggs sat alone in the officers' quarters, laptop open, curtains drawn. The copy of Claire's files flickered on screen, each document labeled, each photo cataloged. He'd memorized them already, but he couldn't stop looking. It was like staring into someone's life after the world decided it never existed. Then his inbox chimed. A new message. No subject line, no sender, just one attachment, 001 WAV. He hesitated, then clicked play. Static first, then wind. Then her voice. "Commander Briggs, if you're hearing this, something gone wrong." The tone was calm, but not cold. The same voice that had said some people never really die. "I can't stay where they want me. The evidence you have, it's not the full picture. There's another file. You'll know it when you see a symbol burned into the corner, 3 wings and a line through the middle. That's Ghostlight's signature. Find it before they do. A pause, then softer. Tell Hanley I said thank you. He believed before the rest did. The recording cut off. Briggs sat frozen. The timestamp on the file, 36 hours ago. 2 days after she'd boarded that helicopter. Jesus Christ, he muttered, she's alive. He found Hanley at dawn on the range, cleaning a rifle that wasn't his. The old man looked up, sensing before Briggs even spoke. She's alive, Briggs said. Hanley stopped moving. You sure? Briggs handed him a small USB drive. Listen for yourself. When her voice filled the air between them, both men went still. The Pacific wind whistled through the shooting stalls, and for a moment the sound felt like her breathing. When the clip ended, Hanley whispered, 3 wings and a line, I've seen that. Years ago, on a crate from Bagram, top-secret shipments, no manifests. So Ghostlight wasn't just a sniper unit, Briggs said. It was something bigger. Bigger, Hanley confirmed, and buried deep. They both knew what came next. Find the mark, find her. The trail began in the digital dust. Buried in base archives, Briggs discovered a maintenance request signed months earlier under Claire Dawson's ID. A request to service storage lockers in a decommissioned hangar near the airfield. Locker 17B. Access restricted, signature Ghostlight symbol. That was their lead. By nightfall they were there, 2 shadows moving through the wind-bent grass, flashlights low, footsteps soft. The hangar smelled of rust and sea salt, forgotten since the last training rotation. Hanley cracked the padlock with a pry bar, muttering, You sure about this, Commander? Briggs gave a thin smile. You ever known me to be sure about anything? The door groaned open. Inside, dust swirled in the flashlight beam. Old crates, weapon racks, faded tarps. Then there. A steel locker marked 17B, the symbol burned into its top corner. 3 wings, a line through the middle. Briggs' pulse quickened. He spun the dial. Nothing. Hanley stepped forward with a small cutting torch he'd smuggled in his duffel. The lock hissed, metal glowing orange, until it dropped. The door creaked open. Inside was a weatherproof case. Black, heavy, a barcode scratched out. No label except a small engraving on the latch, AOS. Briggs knelt, breath catching. Angel of Silence. He opened it. Inside, a hard drive sealed in plastic, a stack of photos, and a folded piece of paper. The handwriting he recognized instantly. If you found this, you're already being followed. Don't try to contact me. Upload the drive to the mirror server listed below, then disappear. See. Hanley read over his shoulder. She knew they'd come after us. Yeah, Briggs whispered, staring at the hard drive. She always knew. Outside, the sound of engines echoed faintly across the tarmac, vehicles approaching fast. Company, Hanley muttered. They killed the lights and slipped out the side door just as headlights washed through the hangar. Black SUVs, agency plates. They moved through the dunes toward the shoreline, boots sinking in wet sand, wind cutting like blades. At the edge of the beach, Briggs stopped, catching his breath. Hanley looked back, silhouettes stepping from the SUVs, flashlights sweeping. They'll search the hangar first, Hanley said. We've got 10 minutes, maybe less. Briggs nodded, gripping the hard drive. Then we make it count. They reached the comms relay near the old pier, an outdated satellite uplink tower used for training transmissions. Briggs connected his laptop, plugged in the drive. A folder opened, GHOSTLIGHT archive. Hundreds of files, video logs, field reports, communication intercepts, enough to rewrite the story of a dozen operations. One folder was marked Phantom Channel. He clicked. Only one file inside, Signal 47 TXT. The text was short. Extraction compromised, one survivor, Relocation to Echo Site confirmed. Surveillance required. Codeword Angel. Echo Site. Hanley frowned. That's Langley slang for secure holding, not safe, containment. They didn't debrief her, Briggs said slowly. They imprisoned her. Before they could speak again, a bright cone of light swept across the pier. Voices shouted behind them. Move, Hanley barked. They sprinted down the boardwalk, boots thudding on the planks. Another spotlight flared. Bullets hit the rail, warning shots. Briggs shoved the hard drive into his jacket, ducking behind a piling. They won't kill us yet, he said. They need to know what we copied. Hanley reloaded his sidearm, face grim. Then we don't let them find out. They waited, breath sinking with the crash of waves. Footsteps drew closer, two, maybe three agents moving in formation. Hanley pointed toward the water. You still swim like you used to. Briggs managed a humorless grin. Worse. Perfect, less splash. They slipped into the surf as flashlights swept past, cold shock biting through their uniforms. The water swallowed their noise, their heat, everything but purpose. Minutes later, they crawled up near the jetty, soaked and shivering but unseen. The SUV's engines roared faintly in the distance, then faded. Briggs sat back, chest heaving. They know we're alive, that's enough for tonight. Hanley looked toward the horizon where the lighthouse beam rotated, slow and steady. You think she's still out there, Commander? Briggs followed the light with his eyes. If she sent that message, she's not done yet. By morning they were ghosts inside their own base, names flagged, accounts locked, clearance revoked. They slept in the old supply tunnels under the pier, eating ration bars and planning their next move. Hanley hacked into a satellite terminal, rerouting through the mirror server listed on her note. When the upload started, a single line of code flashed on screen. Connection received, AOS active. Briggs stared, she's online. Then new text appeared, one letter at a time, typing itself across the black screen. They know about the file, you're compromised, leave Coronado tonight, go to the desert, coordinates incoming. Numbers followed, a location in Nevada. Hanley looked at him, that's Echo Site. Or what's left of it, Briggs said. He looked up toward the sunlight spilling through the tunnel grate. Somewhere, far away, a woman who was supposed to be dead was pulling strings again. And for the first time in weeks, hope felt heavier than fear. That night before they left, Briggs returned one last time to the armory. The place was quiet, stripped bare by investigators. He walked to the shooting bench where she'd stood that first day, where laughter had turned into awe. He laid his hand on the cold metal. I don't know what you're planning, Claire, he whispered, but we're coming. Then he turned off the light and left the room in darkness. Outside, the ocean wind carried a faint echo, like distant rotor blades fatting into the night. Maybe memory. Maybe her. But in the silence that followed, he swore he heard her voice again. Ghosts don't belong in daylight. Why do the dead leave directions? That question stayed with Commander Nathan Briggs for every mile of the drive east. The highway cut through the Mojave like a scar, long, empty, endless. The sky stretched black and silver, stars smeared across it like fingerprints. Hanley sat in the passenger seat, map open on his lap, the numbers she'd sent burned into his memory. Coordinates match an old airfield, he said. Decommissioned back in the 90s. Nothing but sand and ghosts out there. Perfect, Briggs muttered. Her kind of place. Neither spoke for a while. The hum of tires filled the silence, blending with the thoughts neither wanted to voice. Hanley finally broke it. You ever wonder why she picked you, Commander? Out of all people, why trust you with the file? Briggs's eyes stayed on the road. Because she knew I'd been arrogant enough to need redemption. Hanley chuckled softly. Guess we both needed it. The desert swallowed the sound of their laughter. They reached the airfield before dawn, a stretch of cracked tarmac, half-buried hangars and rusted towers standing like bones. The wind howled through the broken structures, carrying the dry scent of forgotten wars. Briggs parked behind a dune, headlights off. The GPS blinked, Echo Site 0.4 miles. They advanced on foot. Hanley's boots crunched on gravel. Each step felt heavier, like the desert itself didn't want them there. At the edge of the compound, Briggs stopped. The fence was still electrified, faint blue arcs dancing along its coils. Not abandoned then. Hanley crouched, scanning with a handheld receiver. The screen glowed faintly. Active signals, low-frequency encryption, military grade. "Someone's still running this place," Briggs whispered. He looked through his binoculars. In the distance, lights glowed beneath one hangar door. Shadows moved. Men with rifles, private security, not Navy. Their gear had no insignia. Hanley grunted. Contractors, probably agency cover. Briggs adjusted focus. Then she's inside. Hanley frowned. Or what's left of her. Briggs lowered the binoculars. "No, she's alive," you heard her voice. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the same hard drive she'd left. And she didn't risk sending this just to die in a desert bunker. They waited until nightfall. The desert turned from gold to gray to black. The temperature dropped fast, the air sharp enough to sting. Briggs and Hanley moved along the outer wall, cutting through the fence where the voltage dropped lowest. Inside, floodlights hummed overhead, illuminating a labyrinth of equipment and old aircraft. They crouched behind a storage crate. Hanley pointed. "There, command tower, that's where the power feeds converge." Then that's where she'd hide a signal relay. They moved in silence, slipping through shadow like soldiers who'd done it too many times before. The tower door was unguarded. Briggs eased it open, pistol drawn. Inside, dust floated in thin beams of light. Computers hummed low, screens flickering. Hanley's voice dropped to a whisper. "These systems are live. Someone's monitoring remote feeds." Briggs moved to the nearest terminal. Lines of code scrolled automatically, looping through surveillance networks and encrypted transmissions. Then the screen flickered. A message appeared. "Welcome back, Commander." Briggs froze. "She's watching us." The cursor blinked. Then new text appeared, one word at a time. "Follow the sound." Hanley looked around. What sound? Then they heard it. A faint hum, steady, rhythmic, coming from below the floor. They found a maintenance hatch behind a rack of servers, sealed with heavy bolts. Briggs pried them loose. The hatch opened with a groan, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Hanley peered down. "You think she's down there?" "Only one way to know." They descended. The tunnel beneath Echo Site smelled of dust and oil. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Faint lights lined the walls, emergency bulbs flickering like heartbeat monitors. At the bottom, a door stood half open, its hinges rusted. Briggs pushed it wider. A small room waited beyond, bare concrete, a single desk and a terminal glowing pale blue. Beside it, a cot. Blankets folded with military precision. A coffee mug still half full. Hanley's whisper cracked the silence. She was here. Briggs approached the terminal. It was already unlocked. A video feed played on loop. Surveillance footage from inside the hangar, dated 2 days earlier. The frame showed her, Claire Dawson, sitting at the same desk. Her hair shorter now, eyes shadowed but sharp. She was speaking quietly to the camera. "If you're watching this, you found the signal. Good. That means you're still alive." Briggs swallowed hard. "I don't know how long they'll keep me here," her recording continued. "But they need what I know and they won't risk killing me yet. Ghostlight was never about intelligence. It was a cleanup program. They sent us to eliminate witnesses. Then they eliminated us. Crosswind was just one of many. I kept the evidence they couldn't destroy. It's on an encrypted node connected to this site. Upload it. Then walk away. Don't try to find me again." The video glitched, her voice distorted. Some truths are heavier than bullets. The screen went black. Hanley stared, throat tight. She's alive but trapped, Jesus. Briggs leaned on the desk, jaw clenched. She wants us to finish what she started. Then the terminal beeped. A new line of text appeared. Alert, unauthorized access DETCTED. Security response inbound. Hanley cursed. They know we're here. Briggs yanked the hard drive from his pack, slotted it into the port. We're finishing the upload before we move. Progress bar, 12%. Footsteps echoed above boots, heavy, moving fast. Come on, Briggs muttered, watching the bar crawl. Hanley aimed his weapon at the ladder. We've got company, Commander. The terminal pinged again, 45%, 63%, 82%. Then a flashbang dropped through the hatch. Light and sound ripped the air apart. Briggs hit the floor, ears ringing, vision blurring. He fired blind, heard shouts and metal clanging. Hanley grabbed him, dragging him toward the side exit. Upload done, Hanley yelled. They burst into the outer tunnel as rounds ricocheted off concrete. Briggs fired back, short bursts, calculated. The exit door was ahead, steel, half open. They dove through, slamming it behind them. Outside, the desert night roared with rotor blades, helicopters, spotlights sweeping the dunes. Hanley shouted over the noise, "They're sealing the site." Briggs wiped blood from his temple. "Then we disappear." They ran, through dust, through the sound of engines and gunfire, through the thin line between defiance and surrender. By the time the horizon lightened, they were miles from the airfield, crouched in the shadow of a dry ravine. Their truck was gone, probably seized. Hanley leaned against a rock, chest heaving. "We're cut off." Briggs nodded. "But the data's out, she wins." Hanley laughed bitterly. "You sure about that? Winning doesn't feel this much like dying." Briggs didn't answer. He was staring at something blinking faintly on his phone, a text, unknown number. Coordinates received. Proceed north. 900, come alone, see. Hanley leaned over. "That's her again." Briggs nodded slowly. "Looks like it." Hanley sighed. "You sure it's not a trap?" Briggs slipped the phone into his pocket. Only one way to find out. The next morning they reached the coordinates. A small abandoned church sat in the middle of nowhere, its cross leaning, paint flacking under the desert sun. A single black SUV was parked outside. Hanley stayed back with binoculars while Briggs approached, weapon holstered but hand ready. The front door creaked open. A woman stepped out. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, sunglasses. Sunlight caught the edge of a scar along her cheek. Her hair shorter now, her stance still perfect. "Claire." She smiled faintly. "You're late." Briggs stopped 3 paces away. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," she said, "but they'll wish I was." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally breaking. "You left a trail. I wanted you to find it. Needed someone who'd still do the right thing after the system stopped pretending." Hanley approached slowly from behind the dune, lowering his weapon. "Hell of a reunion, ma'am." She nodded to him, "Still watching my 6th chief." "Always." She motioned them inside. The church was stripped bare, pews gone, altar gone, just concrete and sunlight. A small satellite rig hummed near the pulpit. "I uploaded the evidence," Briggs said. "It's in the wind now." "Good," she replied. "Then we're almost done." "Almost?" Hanley asked. She met his eyes. "The files you uploaded, they'll trigger an internal review, maybe a few resignations. But the real players are still hidden. I need to expose them all, and for that I need one last piece." Briggs frowned. "What piece?" She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. "This. It contains the final key, agency code names, safe houses, payment channels. But it needs to be broadcast from a military network node, which means we go back in." Hanley stared at her. "You mean Coronado?" She nodded once. Home field advantage. Briggs laughed, a dry, tired sound. You realize if we go back, they'll arrest all of us before we reach the gate. Then we don't go through the gate, she said. We go under it. For a moment, none of them spoke, only the desert wind moving through the hollow church. Then Briggs smiled faintly. You really are a ghost. Claire's gaze softened. No, Commander, just someone who got tired of being buried alive. That night, as the three of them planned the impossible, the stars burned sharp above the desert, each one a reminder that light survives even in silence. Hanley spread the map across the floor, tracing routes with a penlight. If we come in through the old training tunnels by the cliffs, we can reach the comms center without tripping alarms. Briggs nodded. We hit the uplink, broadcast her data, and vanish. Claire studied both men quietly, then said, No, you vanish. Once the upload starts, they'll come for me. I'll hold them off. Hanley frowned. Not happening. She looked at him. It's already happened once before. Briggs shook his head. No sacrifices, not this time. Claire smiled faintly, tired but certain. Commander, you can't save someone who already gave herself away years ago. Her voice dropped softer, almost lost to the wind. Just promise me one thing: when this is done, make sure someone remembers the name Ghostlight, not as a weapon, as a warning. Hanley swallowed hard. We'll remember. Briggs met her gaze. Always. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying sand like whispers across the barren plain. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, or maybe rotor blades again. The past was coming for all of them, but for the first time, none of them were running anymore. Why do some ghosts come home? Maybe because unfinished things never stop calling. Coronado slept under a haze of coastal fog that night, the kind that muffles footsteps and erases silhouettes. Three figures moved along the cliffside, silent, deliberate, invisible. Claire led, a shadow among shadows, the wind whipping her hair across her face. Hanley followed, burdened with the sat pack and climbing gear. Briggs trailed last, checking bearings on his wrist compass, every heartbeat syncing with the distant surf. They had been gone a week, long enough for the base to tighten its security, long enough for them to know this was suicide. Access tunnels 20 meters ahead, Hanley whispered, still open on thermal. Briggs nodded. Then we're on time. Claire said nothing. She just crouched near the cliff's edge, tracing her finger over the weather-stained concrete that jutted from the rock. I used this tunnel in 2019, she murmured. Ghostlight staging. Nobody's touched it since. You sure it's clear? Briggs asked. She glanced back at him, a hint of irony in her smile. I built half the security grid here, Commander. You really want to double-check me? Briggs almost smiled, but the moment passed quickly. Fair enough. They slipped inside. The tunnel smelled of salt and oil, an old artery running beneath the base. Rusted pipes dripped condensation onto the narrow path. Their flashlights moved like whispers along the walls, illuminating faded graffiti left by recruits decades ago. Hanley grunted as he ducked under a beam. Feels strange sneakin' into a place I gave half my life to. Claire's voice echoed ahead, steady, detached. Strange is relative, Chief. Coming back was never the hard part. Leaving was. Briggs watched her silhouette framed by the beam's edge. She moved differently now, less mechanical, more alive, like she'd stopped trying to hide the soldier beneath the disguise. The tunnel opened into a maintenance bay. Faint orange light bled through vents from above, the underbelly of the communications wing. Uplinks 30 meters overhead, Claire said. We trigger the node manually, plug in the flash drive, and broadcast before they trace it. Briggs nodded. And once they trace it. She looked at him. You run. They climbed the service ladder into a crawlspace lined with cables. Voices drifted faintly through the vents, guards above, chatting, bored. Hanley checked his watch. Patrol rotation in 8 minutes. Claire eased the vent aside and peered into the comm center. Rows of monitors, one technician, two guards. Routine night shift. She turned to the men. "We're lucky." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Lucky." "They're complacent," she said. "Complacent people don't see ghosts." She dropped soundlessly from the vent, landing behind a server stack. The others followed. Within seconds, she'd crossed the room, unplugged the technician's headset, and pressed a tranquilizer patch against his neck. He slumped without a sound. Hanley blinked. "Where'd you even?" She silenced him with a glance. "Focus." They dragged the body behind a desk. Then Claire moved to the main console. Her hands flew across the keys, movements sharp, exact. "Firewall changed," she muttered. "They've tightened protocols." "Can you still breach it?" Briggs asked. Her expression hardened. "I wrote half their encryption back in Ghostlight. I can breach it blindfolded." Hanley smiled faintly. "We've seen that trick." She ignored him, inserting the flash drive. The screen filled with cascading code. Data began to upload: video logs, emails, lists of names. Progress: 18%, 42%, 71%. Then the console beeped sharply. "Alert, unauthorized upload DETCTED. Security lockdown initiated." "Damn it," Briggs hissed. Red lights flooded the room. A klaxon blared overhead. Hanley aimed his rifle at the entrance. "They're coming." "Keep them out," Claire said. Her voice was steady, almost serene. Briggs turned to her. "We don't have time." "Yes, we do," she said. "Long enough to finish what they buried." The first wave hit, two armed guards bursting through the side door. Hanley dropped them both with precision bursts. Briggs sealed the door behind them. "Status," he barked. 89%, Claire answered. "Almost there." A loud metallic thud rattled the air, the sound of a breach charge priming on the main door. "Claire," Briggs shouted. She didn't look up, not yet. The explosion blew the hinges apart. Smoke, shouting, flashlights cutting through red haze. Hanley fired again, rolling for cover. Briggs returned bursts toward the doorway. Through the chaos, Claire's voice remained calm. 98%, 99, done. She yanked the drive free and shoved it into Briggs's chest. "Take it, get it out." He stared at her. "You're coming with us." She shook her head. "No, they're tracking by heat signature. 2's manageable, 3, not." "Claire." She stepped closer, eyes fierce. "I already died once, Commander. Don't make it twice for nothing." Another flash. Shrapnel tore through the ceiling. Hanley grabbed Briggs by the shoulder. "She's right, we've gotta move." Claire pressed a pistol into Briggs's hand. "You'll need it." Then she smiled, a small human smile that almost broke him. "Tell them the angel finally stopped running." Before he could argue, she spun toward the breach, firing in controlled bursts. "Go," she shouted. Briggs hesitated just long enough to memorize her face one last time, calm under chaos, eyes bright against the smoke. Then he and Hanley ducked into the crawlspace, disappearing into the vents as alarms screamed through the base. Behind them, the gunfire grew distant. They emerged half a mile away near the old training docks, lungs burning. The fog off the ocean rolled thick, swallowing sound. Briggs stumbled against the railing, coughing smoke from his throat. Hanley collapsed beside him, chest heaving. "Tell me she made it out," Hanley said. Briggs looked back toward the glow above the comms wing, the firelight pulsing through fog. "If anyone could, it's her." Hanley stared at him. "But you don't believe that." Briggs didn't answer. He just stared at the water, waves slamming against the pier. In his hand, the flash drive felt impossibly heavy. By morning, the headlines broke across every secure channel. Internal agency leak exposes Black Operations Network. Names, numbers, transfers. The scandal hit like a detonation. Briggs watched it unfold on a stolen laptop in a motel room near Oceanside. The footage looped, politicians denying, generals resigning, reporters saying the word ghostlight for the first time in public. Hanley stood near the window, blinds half drawn. She did it. Briggs nodded slowly. Yeah, she did. Hanley's voice softened. You think she's alive? Briggs looked out at the sea. The morning sun turned the water gold. I think she's wherever ghosts go when they finally finish their mission. Later that day, Briggs returned alone to the base perimeter. The place swarmed with investigators and press now, cordoned areas, cleanup crews. Nobody noticed the man standing beyond the fence line, watching quietly. He waited until night fell, until the lights dimmed and the noise faded. Then he walked the shoreline, following instinct more than reason. Near the far end of the beach, he found it, a single set of boot prints leading from the waterline toward the cliffs. The waves had almost erased them, but not completely. He knelt, tracing one print with his finger. The tread pattern was familiar, ghostlight issue. He exhaled a shaky breath. You made it, didn't you? The wind carried no answer, only the sound of gulls and the soft hiss of the tide retreating. He looked up toward the lighthouse, the same place where she'd said goodbye weeks ago. The beam swept slowly across the horizon, steady as heartbeat. For a moment Briggs imagined her standing there again, wind in her hair, eyes calm, rifle slung across her back. Watching, not waiting. He smiled faintly. Mission complete, Angel. Then he turned away. 2 days later, Hanley met him in a diner off base. The morning crowd buzzed around them, oblivious to the two ghosts sitting in the corner booth. Hanley pushed a folded newspaper across the table. They're calling her a myth again. Anonymous source. Unconfirmed origin. You'd think after all this they'd at least say her name. Briggs skimmed the article, then set it down. That's how it's supposed to be. Real heroes don't need headlines. Hanley leaned back. So what now? Briggs stirred his coffee. I retire, you disappear, and somewhere out there she keeps the silence alive. Hanley smiled sadly. You think she'll ever stop fighting? Briggs looked out the window at the ocean stretching endless and blue. No, because people like her don't stop. They just move to quieter wars. That night back at the lighthouse, the beam cut through fog like a blade of memory. A single figure stood near the rail, hood up, face hidden, watching the coastline below. When the wind shifted, it carried a faint whisper, almost too soft to hear. Some people never really die. Then the figure turned, boots crunching softly on gravel, and disappeared into the mist. Back in the city, Commander Nathan Briggs sat at his desk, the flash drive now locked in a drawer beside a folded photograph. It showed Claire Dawson with her team under that tattered flag, the same one he'd seen in the envelope. Beneath it, in fatting ink, her words, for the ones who didn't get to walk away. He traced the handwriting with his thumb, whispering, You walked farther than any of us. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the windows. It sounded like rotor blades fatting into distance, like ghosts changing positions again. He smiled. Rest easy, Angel. And in that quiet moment, for the first time in his life, the commander felt something he hadn't felt since she'd walked into his armory that first day: peace. How long does peace last when it's built on silence? For Commander Nathan Briggs, it lasted exactly 89 days. He'd left Coronado behind, the court inquiries, the endless interviews, the half-truths printed in the press. The world moved on as it always did, but ghosts don't vanish, they just learn to breathe quietly. He'd bought a small cabin on the edge of Washington State, overlooking cold water and pine, a place meant for forgetting. But he never did. Each morning he brewed the same bitter coffee, stared at the same empty chair across the table, and told himself he was fine. Then he'd look at the folded photo on the shelf, the one of Claire Dawson with her team, and the lie would dissolve again. She was gone. Or maybe not. Because ghosts, he'd learned, have a way of keeping promises. One fog-soaked afternoon, the silence broke. A knock at the door. 3 times, even rhythm, not neighborly. Briggs opened it halfway, one hand unconsciously near the pistol he no longer carried by right, only by memory. A delivery driver stood outside holding a weathered parcel. No markings, no return address, only his name written in faint ink, CDR, in Briggs. "Sign here," the man said, voice indifferent. Briggs signed. The driver turned and left without another word. He closed the door, setting the box on the counter. For a moment he just stared at it. No ticking, no smell, no weight of danger, at least not physical. He opened it. Inside, a small metal case, a flash drive, and a note. 3 words, scrawled in handwriting he knew better than his own. "Not done yet." The screen flickered to life when he plugged it in. A single file appeared, AOS. He clicked. A video opened. The camera faced a dimly lit room, industrial, foreign, a concrete wall behind the speaker. And then there she was. Claire Dawson. Alive. Her hair shorter still, her face thinner, a faint scar along her jaw, but her eyes sharp, steady, unbroken. She exhaled slowly before speaking. "If this found you, Commander, then the system's still breathing. And if the system's still breathing, it means I didn't go far enough." Briggs froze, every muscle tight. "I made it out," she continued. "Barely. The explosion at Coronado wasn't supposed to happen, but I used it. They think I died, I let them." Her gaze lowered briefly, and for the first time there was hesitation. "You were right about one thing, the truth costs more than blood. But there's something deeper, something I didn't give you." She leaned forward. Ghostlight wasn't just a kill program, it was recruitment. They were building something new, a network outside of oversight. Contractors, operatives, AI logistics, a private war machine. She looked directly into the lens. And now they're rebuilding it, under a new name, Seraphim. You can't stop it alone, but you can still choose what kind of man you want to be when it surfaces again. Then her tone softened. "I don't expect forgiveness. Not for Crosswind, not for Ghostlight, not for any of it. But if you still believe in the part of you that used to command more than orders, follow the trail, Nathan. Finish it." The video ended there. The screen went black. Briggs sat back, trembling slightly. The sound of her voice still filled the room, haunting in its calm certainty. Hanley's words echoed in his mind. She did it. But now she hadn't just done it, she'd started something else. That night he couldn't sleep. The wind battered the windows, and every creak of the cabin sounded like movement outside. Finally, near dawn, he made coffee again, staring out at the endless gray. He plugged the flash drive back in, searching through its hidden files. There was one folder buried deep, Archive 47. Inside, lists of names. Most were familiar, others weren't. Private contractors, defense corporation, offshore accounts. And one entry at the bottom, Raymond Hanley, active. Briggs froze. Hanley. He opened the attached note, just coordinates, Arizona desert. Timestamp 3 days ago. He whispered to himself, "What the hell did you do, Chief?" 2 days later, Briggs stood under a desert sky again, wind cutting across empty sand. He hadn't told anyone. No backup, no plan, just instinct and the memory of a promise. The coordinates led to an old fuel depot, half-collapsed hangars, concrete torn by time. The kind of place Ghostlight might have used for its ghosts. He parked his rented Jeep behind a rusted fuel truck and approached cautiously. The air shimmered with heat. Then he saw movement, a figure near the far building. Broad shoulders, familiar posture. Hanley. Briggs' heart tightened. "Ray." The man turned, startled. Then smiled, tired, lined, older somehow. "Didn't think you'd come, Commander." Briggs closed the distance, voice low. "What's going on? Why's your name on her file?" Hanley exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Because I'm not done either." What does that mean? It means the leak wasn't enough. Hanley gestured to the buildings. Seraphim's real. She was right. The same people who buried Ghostlight are building it again, black budget, off the books, privatized warfare. And I've been watching it grow. Briggs stared, watching or helping. Hanley looked wounded. Don't start that. I stayed close because someone had to know how deep it went. Then why didn't you tell me? Briggs demanded. Hanley's tone hardened. Because you wanted peace. You earned it. I wasn't gonna drag you back into the dirt. Briggs shook his head. You think you can stop this alone? Hanley gave a thin smile. Wasn't planning to. He pulled a small satellite phone from his pocket, thumb hovering over the call button. She told me to call when you got here. Briggs blinked. What? Hanley hit the button. The line rang once, twice, then a voice answered. Commander Briggs, Claire said. His breath caught. You're alive. I told you, she replied softly. Not all ghosts fade. He could almost see her smirk. You shouldn't have come, she continued, if they trace this signal. I don't care, Briggs cut in. You said Seraphim's real, then tell me how to end it. A pause, then meet me tomorrow. Same coordinates, midnight, come alone. Hanley knows the way. The line went dead. Hanley pocketed the phone, eyes serious. You sure about this, Commander? Briggs looked toward the horizon, the dying sun painting the sky in blood. She's still fighting, so yeah, I'm sure. That night they camped near the depot. Hanley made a small fire, their faces lit by orange glow. Neither spoke much, too many memories between them. Finally, Hanley said quietly, You ever think maybe we were the bad guys all along? Briggs looked into the flames. Maybe, but the bad guys don't stay up wondering. Hanley nodded. Yeah, guess that's something. Briggs studied him for a long moment. You trust her? Claire, Hanley shrugged. I trust her to do what she thinks is right, which ain't the same as safe. Briggs smiled faintly. Still the poet. Still the fool, Hanley said. They sat in silence. The fire cracked softly, and somewhere far off, a coyote called into the desert night, a sound that felt both alive and endless. Midnight came. The air was cool now, the stars sharp as glass. They approached the meeting point, a half-buried communications shack at the edge of the compound. Inside, the light flickered once, then she stepped from the shadows. Claire Dawson. Different again. Tactical jacket, no insignia, a faint streak of dust across her cheek, but alive, vividly, defiantly alive. Commander, she greeted softly. He didn't speak. He just stared, disbelief and relief tangled into silence. Hanley grinned. Damn, ma'am, you sure know how to make an entrance. She smiled briefly. Some habits die harder than others. Briggs finally found his voice. You could have told me. I couldn't, she said. They monitor everything. I barely got this message out. Seraphim. She nodded. Bigger than Ghostlight, smarter. They're merging military AI with human field command, perfect soldiers, no conscience. They call them angels. She looked down, voice softening. My code, my data, they're using my work to make killers. Hanley cursed under his breath. Briggs stepped closer. Then we stop it together. She looked at him, eyes tired but fierce. If we go after them, we don't walk away this time. He smiled faintly. That's what you said last time. Last time I meant it, she whispered. Hanley adjusted his pack. Then let's make it count. Claire's expression steadied. Tomorrow they move the core database from here to DC. I've got the route. 1 convoy, 2 escorts. We intercept it before dawn. Briggs looked at the map she unfolded. It was clean, precise, surgical. Classic Dawson. After this, he said, what then? She held his gaze. Then I disappear again for good. Hanley sighed. Guess ghosts never rest. Claire smiled faintly. Some just fade quieter. The wind pushed through the open doorway, carrying sand and silence. 3 soldiers, two living and one already halfway gone, stood together one last time. Not for orders, not for redemption, but because unfinished wars have a gravity all their own. What does it mean to finish a war you were never meant to win? For Claire Dawson, the answer waited somewhere between darkness and dawn. The desert stretched silent under a silver sky, moonlight glinting off rusted vehicles and long-forgotten runways. Three figures crouched in the dunes, Claire, Briggs, and Hanley, watching headlights snake along the distant road. "That's them," Hanley whispered. "Convoys moving, two armored SUVs, one transport in the middle." Briggs adjusted his scope. Seraphim core database should be in that transport. Claire checked her rifle, movements clean and ritualistic. Range 900 meters, crosswind at 2 knots. Hanley looked at her. "900's too close for you, ain't it?" She smirked. "I'm being polite." Briggs couldn't help it, he smiled. Even now she was the same, composed, lethal, quietly human. He looked back at the convoy. "You sure about this, Claire? Once that truck goes up, there's no hiding." She didn't look away from her scope. "I stopped hiding the day I buried my team." They waited for the wind to settle. The desert holds its breath right before violence, that strange stillness, like even nature knows something about to change. Claire exhaled slowly. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Through the scope she saw the world sharpen, heat waves fatting glass clear. The driver's window of the lead SUV reflected the stars. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Driver first. Disable the escort. Leave the transport for me." "Copy that," Briggs said. Hanley nodded, setting his detonator on standby. Claire squeezed once. The rifle cracked. A second later the driver slumped. The SUV swerved, tires grinding dirt. Hanley hit the detonator. A burst of fire erupted near the rear escort, flipping it sideways in a roar of sand and steel. The convoy stalled. Briggs and Hanley moved in from the flank, covering positions, weapons up. Claire stayed on overwatch, calling movements like an orchestra conductor directing chaos. "3 tangos left flank," she whispered. "One behind the transport." Briggs fired twice. Silence returned. The night held its breath again. "Clear," Hanley called. Claire descended from the ridge, rifle slung across her shoulder. She looked smaller up close, human again, not the myth they'd built around her. They reached the transport. Briggs pulled the back door open. Inside, a steel case sat on a secured frame, blinking faintly. Hanley whistled. "That's gotta be it, the Seraphim core." Briggs hesitated. "What do we do with it?" Claire looked at them both. "We end it completely." She stepped into the truck, knelt by the core, and connected a small device. The same one she'd built years ago for Ghostlight data wipes. A beautiful, terrifying machine of her own design. Hanley frowned. "That thing's unstable, right?" "Only if you breathe near it," she said softly. Briggs crouched beside her. "You sure about this? You could still walk away." She looked at him, and for the first time in a long time there was no mask, no soldier, just a woman tired of being used by shadows. "Walk away to what, Nathan? A world that kills its angels and calls them myths. I'm done running from my own creation." Briggs stared at her, jaw tight. "You're not a weapon, Claire." Her smile was small but real. "Then let me prove it." Hanley set the perimeter charges. The desert wind picked up again, dragging sand like memory across the ground. The timer blinked red. 3 minutes. "Time to go," he said. But Claire didn't move. Briggs realized it first. "Claire." She looked back at him, calm. "You two need to be gone before this goes off. The data won't just erase Seraphim. It'll burn every trace of Ghostlight, everything that ever linked us." "Then we all go together," he said. She shook her head. "No, you'll make sure they remember what came after." "Claire, don't." Hanley stepped forward, voice breaking. "We're not leaving you again, damn it." She smiled at him. That same quiet smile from the range, the one that said she'd already made peace. "You both already saved me once," she said softly. "Now let me return it." Briggs's throat tightened. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," she said. "You know that." She reached out, pressed a small patch into his hand. A data shard, old-school military encryption. "If this world still deserves truth," she whispered, "give them that. When they ask who I was, tell them I was nobody special." Then she stepped back into the truck, sealing the door behind her. Briggs slammed his hand against it. "Claire, don't do this." Through the glass, she met his eyes one last time. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, Commander. It simply acts." Then the lock clicked. They ran. Hanley pulled Briggs away, half dragging him down the embankment. The timer reached 10 seconds. The explosion tore the night apart, a single white bloom of light that turned the desert into day. The shockwave hit a second later, flattening them against the sand. When it faded, the transport was gone. Nothing left but smoke and silence. Briggs lay still, staring at the burning horizon. Hanley sat beside him, breathing hard. "She's gone," he said softly. Briggs closed his eyes. She finally stopped running. Neither spoke for a long time. Only the wind answered, carrying ashes across the endless dark. By morning they buried what was left, a single casing from her rifle, half melted but still intact. Hanley placed it in the sand, whispering, "Fair winds, Angel." Briggs said nothing. Words felt too small. He stood there until the sun rose, until the light turned the smoke into gold, and he thought maybe that's what she became. Not gone, just everywhere. Weeks later, the news broke again. Massive data leak destroys black ops network known as Seraphim. Global coverage. Denials, panic, outrage. No one knew who did it. No one mentioned her name. But somewhere, in the silence between headlines, a whisper passed through the ranks. A rumor about a woman they called the Angel of 3,347 meters. Some said she was a myth. Others said she'd been a sniper, a pilot, a ghost. But those who had seen her knew the truth. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a reckoning. Months passed. Briggs returned to the cabin by the sea. The waves still sounded like rotor blades. The air still tasted like salt and loss. He visited Hanley sometimes, who'd bought a small bar in San Diego called Ghostlight. No sign outside. No marketing. Just a place for quiet men to sit and remember the ones who didn't come home. One evening, as Briggs sat at the counter, Hanley placed an envelope in front of him. "Came in yesterday," he said. "No address, just this." Briggs frowned, opened it. Inside, a photo. A crowd in a marketplace somewhere in South America. Sunlight, dust, people moving. And there, in the corner of the frame, blurred but unmistakable, a woman with short dark hair and a faint scar along her jaw, carrying fruit in a basket, smiling. Claire Dawson. Briggs stared at it for a long time. "You think it's real?" Hanley sipped his drink. "I think ghosts take better photos than people do." Briggs smiled quietly, painfully. "Yeah, maybe they do." He folded the picture, placed it in his jacket pocket, and stood to leave. Hanley looked up. "Where you going?" Briggs smiled faintly. "Somewhere with a better view." That night the commander walked the cliffs above the Pacific. The wind was cold but clean. Far out at sea, a faint glimmer of light moved along the horizon, maybe a ship, maybe a flare. He remembered her voice. "Some people never really die." He whispered into the wind, "You were right." Then he raised his hand to his brow in a silent salute. Not the kind from ceremony, but the kind given to equals, to someone who carried the same scars. The beam from the lighthouse swept across his face, bright for a moment, then gone. And in that blink he could almost see her again, standing in the surf, rifle slung low, watching the dawn rise like something she'd earned. The world would never know her story. But for those who did, it was never about medals or headlines. It was about a single truth, that courage isn't noise. It's the quiet act of standing when silence would be easier. As the first light touched the horizon, Briggs whispered the final words she once said to him. Some truths are heavier than bullets. He looked east, smiled through the tears he didn't bother to hide, and added softly, but worth every shot.